Awesome. Okay. Do you want to go first or second? Oh, is it say me? Is it me to go first? I think it's me to go first. Okay. And then it says waiting for Shavana. Hopefully it works. Wait. Okay. So Shavana, welcome. Welcome. If you don't mind, can you introduce yourself however you like? And then if you don't know if you want to share anything about your background, whatever, doesn't matter. But we're going to talk about, you know, about relationships and maybe touch on a little bit about the World Cup because obviously it was a recent affair. So yeah, nice, cool. All right, so let's talk about the World Cup, Shavana. Did you watch anything? Did you watch any games? Who you rooting for? Why, etc. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. No worries. What did you hear? What have you heard about the World Cup, if anything? Because I'm guessing you heard something. Yeah. 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 That's funny. All right. Fair enough. No worries. All right. So, this is obviously that's fair enough. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. All right. So just to come back to the platform where we are. So this is Love is Not Blind, and for those of you that are first timers, essentially, um, I've created a dating app or a social dating app, a networking app as well, combined essentially, for people that are interested in different levels of, you might say, love. You got Logos, Eros, Agape. Those you guys can look that up in your own time. I won't touch it right now, but I am going to be interviewing Shavana, just asking her some questions that are related to, you might say, the dating experience, love, and also linked to other people's experiences as well. So when I ask you a question, Shavana, feel free to maybe personalize it, or you can answer however you see fit from observation, etc. If that makes sense. And if there are any questions that you maybe don't want to answer, you don't have to, obviously. So yeah. Okay. So my first question to you is, in the past, what have you hidden in dating and why? Yeah, I can elaborate if you want me to, but you can answer as you see. What's that? Yeah, yeah. So like, if you're if you're on a first date, second date, whatever, if they ask you a question about something, is there something that you maybe would be like, actually, you don't need to know this at this stage? Okay. What about other people? Like, do you know of any other people, hypothetically, or in real life, that you think actually they would have, from what they've told me or from what you know about them, they would have definitely hidden, let's say, I don't know, their financial, status, their body count, whatever, I don't know, their history. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. All right, so you've heard of or you know of people that say that? Okay. Okay, that's interesting. As in, like on a dating experience, and then potentially only reveal it later in the relationship, or in general. Oh, that's interesting. Ooh, okay. So they think some of the information could be genuinely or has been damaging. Okay. Can you give us an example, a specific example, perhaps? Okay, I get it. What do you make of that? What do you think of that? Do you think that's a good approach, or do you think actually it doesn't necessarily mean that will be the case, but because depending on who, could, yeah, not be too open, maybe. Yeah. What about yourself? Do you think if a guy was to maybe say something to you personally, or to whoever, someone else, maybe if it's reversed, let's say, because we're talking about the women's response, they're holding back, let's say, information. What about it's reversed? Do you think that could also work the same way, and maybe would be damaging if a guy says too much, if it's negative, so if he's got a traumatic, if he's been abused or whatever, I don't know, or taken advantage of. Yeah, yeah. Would that put you off? Yeah, yeah. Okay. So when you said about a woman may think he's that kind of guy, are you including yourself there, or are you just being in general? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um. All right. So I've got a list of questions here. I'm not going to ask you all of them, but if you've got a generous amount of time, at least maybe 30 plus minutes now, then I'll ask you a few more at least. Let me see. Mm, all right. What should be a standards for a first date? Okay. Do you want to know where you're going beforehand, or do you want a surprise? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And do you think a woman or yourself, let's say, should be open to dating multiple people at the same time, or should they focus on one or two, perhaps, or what's your thoughts? What's your suggestions? Okay, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, I get that. Should you? What's that? Okay, yeah. Can you get to know them via webcam, or does it need to be in person? Is there much of a difference? Okay. It's your move, by the way. Do you think you're much different um, on via video compared to in person? And yeah, like, do you think someone's experience with you on the web for the first time over a first time experience in real life with you would be significantly different to maybe to the degree that it might be the difference between whether they're interested or not. Yeah. Okay. You know what's interesting about that? I think for me, it it may not necessarily be much different depending on the context. So, for example, I've had over the years, I've had a few interviews overseas. Obviously, they were done, via video. And when I met the individuals in person, actually, I thought in well, in some cases, let's say, probably in most cases to some degree. Obviously, it's just an interview, it's Q and A's, which is something else altogether. An interview, it's not dating. But when I did meet some of these individuals in person, I found them to be quite similar to how they came across to me on the camera, to how they were in real life. I think part of that is also on the individual themselves. So like some people, they might have a different personality um, via interview, than they do in person. Because you often find that as well, where people are on their best behavior, essentially on an interview anyway, and then when you come to meet them in real life over a period of time, you come to working with them. Actually, they're not that person that they're made out to be. But in a lot of cases, on a positive way, I think it's worked out quite well from in terms of like a professional standpoint, just from little experiences. Okay, so my next question for you then is, can you and is it advisable to have a maybe an official relationship with someone online for a lengthy period? Okay. Um, all right. So now going back to, let's say, the dating app, which I mentioned earlier. So guys, those of you that are tuning in, essentially, there are basically three main modes that you can choose from. One of them is eros. The other one is logo, and then agape. These are like Greek terms, but in other words, eros on the dating app. If you were to select, say, eros, that means that you are looking for, you might say, an emotional, erotic, maybe somewhat sensual, sexual, physical, attractive connection. Okay, on that app, and other people that are likewise, those are the only people that you would be essentially open to. If you clicked on, let's say, logos, that's more to do with like a logical kind of like standpoint. That's more like professional. You got similar interests, maybe professional interests, business interests, um, and it's like a more of a mental potentially connection rather than a physical sexual attraction. And then agape is like, this is the interesting one, especially on a dating app. I mean, there's reasons I'll share another time why I added it, but agape is supposedly the sacrificial love. Okay, and essentially it's usually the love that you might say people have for people that they genuinely love, like their the mother and daughter, father and son, etc. The sacrificial love that you're willing to lay down your life for someone else, whether you lay down your time, your money, your finances. You're not expecting anything, maybe in return for someone, if that makes sense. Again, there's different reasons why people would select that as an option for a dating app. Now, if I was to ask you, Shafana, with regards to those three modes, which one do you think makes most sense in a relationship to select first when you're wanting to get to know someone? Do you think it's better to select agape, maybe eros, logos, or what would you say in your view in terms of like you're first wanting to get to know someone? Which mode makes more sense to select and why? The logos is said to be the logical love, so it's more the mental, professional, business connection, partnership. So you might have similar hobbies, perhaps. You might both be into fitness, or you might work in the same industry, and you want to connect with people of like-mindedness. Let's say, yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah, okay, I get that. I get that. Um, Now let's go back to your younger self. Let's say, um, have you got any advice that you might tell your younger self from hindsight? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, okay, this is an interesting one. What are red flags for you and what are green flags for you, let's say on a first date? Now, I'll give you an example quickly. There's a guy I heard, Miles Monroe actually some years ago, and he just gave an example of a way to test someone's character. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, and I don't know how serious he was when saying this, but he said one way, for example, to see how someone may react is to actually turn up deliberately late to quite, you might say, quite a large degree, whatever that is, whether it's 15, 30, 45 minutes late, I don't know. Show up and see how they react. And you'll get a feel of maybe how they are, how their character is, perhaps. What's your take on that? Is that something that, I don't know, that is worth doing? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what about this then? What are maybe ways or methods? Okay, in fact, before I go to that, what are green flags? Let's say. So you're saying if depending on how they treat others, that could be, for example, if they treat people, if they're respectful, etc. That's a green flag. Let's say, yeah. Obviously, if they do otherwise, that's a red flag. But because obviously because it's a first date, one would assume that someone in general would be like on their best behavior, faking it perhaps or not. It's not necessarily their true selves. Can you think of a way that you could, or not that you would do it, but a good, maybe an effective way that you could actually genuinely be able to assess someone on the first date to some degree in a certain aspect? So I know one way. I'll give you an example. One way that some guys have done, and there are loads of, on YouTube, whatever. There's footage of this. When to test someone, whether they're a gold digger, let's say. The guy will rock up on a date, um, pretend that he's left his card, and just wants to see the reaction of the girl, whether she'll pay for him, or he rocks up. He's outside, he sees a girl he likes the look of. He tends to be homeless, let's say, asks her for money, see how she reacts, and then obviously, like in general, she's not interested, and then he'll she'll turn back. In fact, he'll open up his Ferrari, let's say. He'll make a sound, beep beep. It'll get her attention as she's walking up, and she'll turn back and be like, "Oh my days, is that your vehicle?" And she'll come back and be interested. Yeah, these are ways to test someone to some degree. What comes to mind, and what do you think could be an effective tool? And do you think those methods are effective? Yeah. Oh, is it? The mask comes off. Okay, okay, that's interesting. And all right, if you're dating someone, should you tell them that you're dating other people? If so, why? If not, why not? Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about what about you then? Would you want to know or would you not want to know? And would it, if you knew, if the guy, without you ask, well, let me change it. Would you ask them? Would you want to know? Or if they just tell you anyway, so let's say you're talking and they're like, oh, I've actually got a date later on. If you guys have just gone on a date yes, previous day, would that put you off? Like, what's that? Yeah. Oh, okay, so hold on. You said something interesting there. You said if you're taking things further and they're not seeing anyone else. Is that what you said? Okay, 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 okay. So you would just do that. Are you saying you would just do that naturally without necessarily having to have that conversation? Is that what you're saying? Or okay, okay, okay. And how valuable do you think it is for, as things are progressing, let's say, is it important to have to know their family and friends, or not necessarily? Is it important to know um your, I don't know, someone that you're interested in, to know their family and friends? Is that their social network? Is that important or not necessarily? What's that? Yeah, yeah. Is it okay? Not in the beginning. Okay, yeah. And so you say later down the line, as in know them, as in meet them to, and what would that do for you? Okay. Do you think on the back of that, do you think, let's say in a different scenario, let's say, because sometimes this happens in different cultures actually, do you think arranged marriage or arranged, partnership is a good idea? Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Why is You don't think they could pick you out, someone that you would, or what is it? What is it around that? Okay, okay, I see what you're saying. So that overall sort of thing, you'd rather yourself sort of thing. Okay, what's that? yeah, yeah, more less successful outcomes. I get that. I get that. So what about the successful ones? What made it work then? Yeah. Okay. Okay. What about you then? So two questions for you then. What is it that you what are you desiring specifically? Because you said that you don't think someone could pick out someone that you would maybe want to marry, let's say. And then secondly, do you think someone should desire you as wifey, as a wife to be your wife material? And why? Wait, by the way, let me just add here. I know this. It's not. It's a bit of an excuse, or it is an excuse. I didn't say earlier. I I made a move that I didn't want to make. That was an accident. Just say, just in case you beat. I pressed it and it went somewhere I didn't want it to. Anyway, don't worry. Isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. But sorry, carry on. Oh man. All right. Okay. That rare to find, would you say? And the other question you can answer when you're ready about yourself. She goes, yeah. You said that quick. You said that quick. I like that. That's interesting. Let me hear. This is. I didn't expect that from you. She goes, yeah. But why? Why would you say yeah though? Why would you say that you are your wife material? Why? What is wife? What is wife material? Okay, so are those qualities are they optional or are they just how someone either is or they're not or is it subjective if that makes sense? Like is do you know what I mean? Is there like a is there like a norm? Yeah, is there like a norm if that makes sense? Does that make sense? No, I know. I just what I was saying to you. I know it's an excuse, but it yeah, it cost me. But yeah. All right, let's go again. Cheeky. I like that. Well done. Rematch. Oh, it's your turn. Sorry. Is it you or me? Okay. Oh, okay. I think it may have lost connection again. I'll wait to see if turn. My one says waiting for Shavana. Okay. Yeah, yeah. My one says waiting for Shavana, but it's not. It's like it's just loading. So we'll see. We'll see if it comes back. Um. Yeah. So those things you highlighted, are they not things that anyone could potentially like maybe demonstrate? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then what about physically? Does that come into it at all? Like the eros? Because I think you've mentioned right now, you've maybe touched on, I think maybe elements of maybe agape to some degree. What about logos and eros? How much does that for for being wife and material? If that makes sense. Yeah. All right. So all right. So just to be clear. So far you mentioned certain attributes that make you wife material, and then you've also said obviously in general, let's say, depending on the guy, women have a lot of these traits, let's say, um, and they will showcase those traits depending on how the guy treats them and stuff. Now, when it comes to say eros, which is like emotional, erotic, physical, sensual, sexual, whatever, and then you've got the logos, which is the logical, you might say hobbies, interests, passions, whatever. Um, you said they're equally important. Does that also contribute to you being wife material as well, or again, yeah, 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 yeah. And what about physical, sensual, sexual chemistry, attraction? What about that? How important is that? Does that contribute as well to being wifey? But can you? Oh, so that's interesting. You just said that. Um, oh, so you're saying you can't go beyond friend zone if you're not physically attracted to someone. But you cannot be. You cannot be. Okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 Okay. So what about? Okay. So this is interesting. What about like? Let me ask you. What would you prefer? What would you prefer? A guy that looks like Chucky, that has an amazing personality, yeah, in all these other areas, but he looks like Chucky, or a guy that, let's say, looks like Brad Pitt, for instance, but has a terrible personality. What would you prefer? What's that? What's that? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But what would you prefer though? Out of the two, if you had to choose. Oh, okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. So at the heart of it, personality would sway. Yeah, yeah. Said something. Did you say you're not talking or you are talking from experience? You said something. I couldn't quite hear what you said. Do you remember? Yeah. Yeah, 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 I get you. Okay, I get that. All right, so now this is interesting. You said, all right, so you said basically it makes, this is me saying it in my own words. In other words, it makes sense to be physically attracted to someone that you want to be with, let's say. But you said it's possible. Obviously, there's extremes like Chucky. Let's kick him out. But it's possible to not be so attracted to someone, but because they are, you might say emotionally intelligent, whatever. Like in other areas, let's say agape, logos, whatever. They're high in that those two areas. Let's say that you, it could be. It's possible. It's possible that you could still become actually attracted to them at a later stage. Let's say. Okay, so then now let me ask you this then. What do you what do you think what do you think it is for a man's perspective in general? And do you think there is a difference? Because I know that from listening to like Fresh and Fit or some other, Kevin Samuels, he's quite big back in the day, on like relationships and doing a lot of consultations and whatnot, with men and women actually, um, and obviously my own observation stuff. But you do see, my view, I definitely see in general, especially depending on the demographics and stuff, there's a difference between what a lot of women think is, let's say, wife material compared to what men actually think is wife material. No, no, I want to ask you what your thoughts are, beforehand, and then I'll tell you what your thoughts are on what a man would think is wife material. Do you think it would be the same as what you think? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are those. I'd say yeah, attractive is up there definitely. Eros is up there. Um, and then like you mentioned, like domestic. Depending on the guy, like especially financially, you know, and in terms of business, some guys, they might hire, they might even do it themselves. So a lot of guys, depending on their status, you might say they might live independently anyway, so that they don't really need that aspect. But definitely, like that it would be appreciated if a woman can cook. That would definitely be appreciated for sure, especially if the guy can't cook, but or won't cook, let's say. But yeah, yeah, those are some interesting points there. But yeah, thanks for that, Shavana. I've enjoyed the chat. Well, I'll chat with you again as well sometime. Still on relationships, on some slightly different, areas and some different kind of questioning. And yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's been good getting to see your thoughts on some of these questions here. Um, I've got one more question for you. Um, what do you think is what do you think is the biggest red flag for a woman to share with a guy that I know we've spoken about some of this already. To share with a guy that she may not think is a red flag. Does that make sense? So that's a bit different. What's the biggest red flag that a woman can share with a guy that she wouldn't necessarily think is a red flag? Does that make sense? Okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. For me personally, there's a few. There's actually a few of them. Um, and if I'll be honest, one of them, I'm not sure if I should say here, but it is something I want to talk about with you and others at a later stage on a slightly different topic because this one is definitely for me a red flag, but it's not necessarily directly relevant, or it is relevant, but it's definitely for another show as well on another topic. So I'll leave that one for now. What I'm thinking. Um, I will. Okay, I'll share this one actually. Some girls, and this is some girls and some men. Um, they they and let me just be clear, by the way. This is what I would argue. Maybe at any stage, maybe depending on the answer. Okay, I'll give you an example, so you'll know where I'm coming from. Years ago, I think I was 17. There was a girl I came across. We got talking, and when we met, when I first saw her outwardly, I made certain assumptions in my mind about her that was way off. Because once I got speaking to her, and she actually, like, as far as I'm aware, she was quite open. I was shocked, Shabana. Like this girl, but put it this way, I met this girl, and we got talking, and then when we were talking, it came up about um, somehow it came up. I don't know if I asked her or it just somehow came out in conversation because I think we had two mutual connections, but it came up about body count, yeah. And this is see what you think of this. So there's two things. There's body count and also if a girl has had an experience with someone that you know. Does that make sense? These are things that some girls may not think it are red flags, but for some guys, it's a game changer. Does that make sense? Like depending on what how the guy sees it. So for example, if the girl, let's say the girl says what she's 17, she said let's say 20 partners, yeah. Some guys that'll be like sorry, like in their mind they're like you can't be wifey anymore just from hearing that number for some, or if you've had an experience with one of their friends. Does that make sense? But but some girls may not see it that way. Does it make sense? They may not see it. They might just be open. Like it's what happened in it. Again, it's a judgment, but it depends how you see it. Because obviously you can look beyond. Like me, for example, I could be like, actually, you know what? That was in the past. That's not now. But those are things that a lot of, I would say, a lot of men in general, especially depending on how the guy sees himself as well, that could be a put off. Like the idea of your wife to be having had a moment or two with one of your friends, and then like yeah, that could be a put off. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that? You don't know if you could overlook that. Yeah, 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 yeah. That makes sense. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, nice talking with you, Shavana. I'll chat with you later anyway, and we'll connect again some more. Thanks for that, and well done, by the way. But just to be clear, I'll be real. I'm not just saying this, Shavana. I generally, yeah, I didn't mean to go where I went to. If I did it on purpose, I'll in my mind, you can, you can see how much it means. Thank you, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it seriously. Thanks. Take care. Bye bye.